If you sat down to watch television in the 1980s, the transaction was entirely one way. You received the broadcast and you consumed it in silence. The cultural consensus of what was worth watching and what it meant was handed down from the top. A small circle of academic reviewers and syndicated film critics spoke, and the audience listened. When a local station aired a cheaply made B-movie or a bizarre mid-century educational short, viewers had to endure the forced acting and flimsy sets with absolutely no platform to complain. Millions of people were experiencing the exact same cinematic torture in their own homes. That shared, unvoiced annoyance created a cultural vacuum, leaving audiences perfectly primed for someone willing to finally break the silence. In 1988, a prop comic named Joel Hodgson launched a do-it-yourself program on KTMA, a local public access station in Minnesota. The premise was completely absurd. Mad scientists imprison a hapless janitor on an orbiting satellite, forcing him to watch terrible movies so they can study his deteriorating brain. To keep his sanity, the host builds a cast of sentient robot companions, assembled from actual spare parts and plastic bowls, to watch the films alongside him. Instead of suffering through the movies, the characters actively mocked them. They talked over the dialogue, pointed out the obvious continuity errors, and filled the dead air with obscure cultural references, inventing the comedic art of the riff. By simply speaking up, they gave the audience permission to do the same. The person sitting on the couch was no longer a silent victim of bad programming. They were in on the joke. Riffing relies on a strict triangulation: found media, intermediary comedian, and audience interacting in real time. The riff isolates botched elements, a visible zipper or a fumbled line. This shatters the illusion. The viewer is forced to remember the movie as a manufactured product. Once that barrier is broken, the viewer doesn't have to accept the film's intended message. A supposed heroic protagonist who solves problems with mindless aggression can be reevaluated and ridiculed, rather than just cheered. By training viewers to spot the cheap seams in a terrible movie, the format subtly teaches them to look for the artificial construction behind all media. That highly specific, critical lens carried the show from local Minneapolis television to a national audience on Comedy Central, and later the Sci-Fi Channel. In the middle of its fifth season, the show faced a major stress test. Following an escalating fight regarding creative control with his producer, creator and host Joel Hodgson left the series entirely. Michael J. Nelson stepped into the host role, bringing a sharper, more cutting edge to the comedy. He steered the show through its peak popularity in the late 1990s. 2 decades later, the show successfully crowdsourced a massive revival on Netflix, and later its own independent platform, the Gizmoplex, placing Jonah Ray in the jumpsuit. The series survived network cancellations, huge temporal gaps, and entirely new casts, proving the strength of its core invention. The host was interchangeable. Democratizing the heckler was the actual draw. Long after the original run ended in 1999, the critical habits the show popularized had already seeped into the broader culture. Viewers realized that an artistic failure could be just as entertaining to engage with as a masterpiece, provided you had the right perspective. You can trace this lineage here. The show's DNA grew into Television Without Pity, where writers published hyper-detailed recaps. Cast members later launched riff tracks for blockbusters, while millions live-tweeted their own jokes during the Oscars and reality finales. The modern internet is populated by active consumers who instinctively interrogate and mock their daily content. That behavior was incubated in the satellite of love. Today, we inhabit a media landscape where even the most polished narratives, from political messaging to corporate branding, suffer from the same indifference and lazy choices as old B-movies. When we see the wheels fall off of a serious story, we use the same tools we learned in that simulated dark theater. We look for the seams, isolate the goofs, and ask the producers, what is this narrative even for? Watching the world this way changes our relationship to it. Instead of becoming a passive victim of a poorly put-together spectacle, the viewer becomes an observer, finding a distant theater from which the incompetence of the production becomes the main attraction. This perspective doesn't fix the errors in the broadcast, but it does allow the audience to revel in just how bad the production really is. Ultimately, the most effective response to a manufactured world is to remember the show's final advice. It's just a show. I should really just relax.